Welcome to our journey of deepening into systemic theory and family constellations. I am Rekha Kurup, a facilitator of family constellation, and in today's video of the Wisdom Lighthouse series, we are going to go deeper into the very core philosophy of family constellation, namely the principles of relationships or orders of love. We're going to look at conscience, guilt and innocence, and the bonds and binds of conscience that we experience and how it influences us. We're going to look at the different levels of conscience. So this is really going into the philosophy. And I'm hoping that you watched the first video, which kind of created the foundation of the principles on which the entire work rests, and specifically about family systems. And so let's begin this journey today. And I hope that it opens more possibilities in your insight. And you give yourself the opportunity to really experience it firsthand. Okay? So I'm going to take the support of my of this presentation. So here we are. This is where we paused last time. In the last video is about that love follows the hidden order of the greater soul. And for love to flourish, you need to do what it demands and to refrain from doing what harms it. So we are all, we are all seeking love. We all want to experience love in our life. We all want to be seen. We all want to be acknowledged. We all want to receive, and we want to be able to give in our relationships. And so there is a way, there's a movement in which love flows. And how do we surrender to that love and allow it to be available to us? And so it is important to know what chokes this love, right? What kind of refrains its movement towards us? What limits it? So this is what we are going to really look into today's presentation and today's video. So yes, we are going into the wisdom and philosophy of constellation, and this is something that for me resonates a lot with this work, is agreeing to my unique place on earth, and not just my unique place, my unique fate on earth. And when I surrender to my fate, what opens up? Yeah? And so here I have this picture. It's about this beautiful valley, as you can see. And you can see all these trees, these different trees. And then you see this tree, the way it is bent. Yeah? And I wanted to read this from Bird's book, Love's Hidden Symmetry. The systemic orders of love influence us as much as its environment influences a tree. If a tree is able to align itself between the force of gravity and the pull of the sun, it naturally grows vertically, with its branches equally balanced. In this form, it is most stable. If, however, the tree is unable to align itself in the usual way, perhaps because it is growing on a canyon wall, it will adapt, growing as straight as the systemic interplay of wind, soil, gravity, and sun allows. Such a tree is not less good than a more vertical tree, but it may be less stable and not as tall as its cousins in the valley. Both trees are subject to the same laws of nature, yet the dynamics of their habitats exert differing pressures on them, and each finds a systemic equilibrium in the best way it can. In the same way, like if you look at this tree, we don't know what happened to this tree, that it is leaning, yeah, towards the side. Yeah, so its entire tree is leaning towards the side. We don't know what was part of its journey that did it like that. Did a strong branch get cut on the other side? And you can see there are some trees that are cut on its side. And so you can see that it is leaning in that way. And so in the same way, so this tree is like, it's not weak or strong than the others, but at the same time, there is a way in its stability, the way it is showing up. It may or may not be less stable. But if you look at the other trees, you can see there's a distinct difference, that its environment has shaped it this way. The same way within our family system, each person, each individual in a family system shows up very differently. Yeah, like the three children in a family do not get the same parents. Yeah, and so in that way, so the sun, the sunshine, the water, the nourishment, the love that comes even for a kid that is born in a family system can have an impact on its own growth and what it is able to do and not do. And so that is something that we can really start seeing that within constellation work. So family constellation work supports us to place and see the whole picture of our individual challenges or problems in a way that is experiential, that it can be felt, sensed, and seen in the here and now. So in constellation work, we work with energy, order, and this is what the principles of relationships. And we work with facts. And we work with these three. So this is what we're going to look at in today's video. What do we mean when we say energy? What is order? Facts we know. Facts is not what we want, that what we kind of perceive, but what really happens. Yeah, not the meaning we give it, not the judgment we have about it. But if a fly on the wall looks at it, it's not about whether we liked it or we did not like it. It is bereft of how emotionally we were present. It's more than that. It's about the fact. Like if a child lost its mother at birth, that's a fact. Now, how that impacted the child is also a fact, but it could also be different. But that fact is very personal. It could affect all the kids differently, right? But the fact is that the mother was lost at childbirth. And if parents were fighting, in someone's house, there was constant fighting between the parents. And there was something happening between the parents, and how the child sees it or what the child's view of that is different. But what was happening in the family or in the home, what was happening with the father, what was happening with the mother, there can be facts there. And then there is what we perceive that was happening, right? So we are always in constellation, we work with facts. So we really look at what's going on. So, and the facts are usually very few. Yeah, the facts are very, in the sense the facts are clear and available. The stories can be, around the facts can be different based on who is saying the story. So in constellation, we work with facts and not the stories or the narratives or the perceptions. And these three aspects really support the facilitator to explore the seeker's wish in a way that supports the seeker to be able to see and agree to how life has come through to them. Who, what, where, when needs to be remembered and included. Regain flow back in one's life to live and embody one's purpose. And to agree and stand in our unique place in our family, in our relationships, in life. Yeah? And to meet our fate just the way it has opened up, just the way it is part of our life. and in that, find our flow, find our life, and to live that fully. So constellation really allows us to see that and to agree to that, yeah, and to find our movement ahead in our flow. Yeah. So the first, what is energy? So energy is one of the, so we are going to look at these three key components of this work. So first is energy. What is energy? Yeah. So we are all in this knowing field. Yeah. Whether we are aware of it or whether we are not aware of it, we are in a knowing field. This knowing field has everything in it, right? It is so our own unconscious is part of the knowing field, and this with it. So to know this knowing field, let me give you an example. Has it ever happened in your life that you thought about somebody, out of the blue? It's been 30, 40 years. You just remember them and you start thinking, oh wow, I haven't thought about them in such a long time. And suddenly you get an email from them, or you meet another person who starts talking about them, or maybe you go somewhere and suddenly you see them. Maybe they're visiting, uh, and unexpectedly, and you see them. Then you start wondering, how did this happen? Did I meet them because I thought about them? Or was that already there was a movement in the field that made me think about them because their movement had already started? Is it because they thought that I started thinking? We don't know. So, but what we know is that there's an interconnectedness here in this field. And when something is pulled, something else somewhere also feels the pull. Like, sometimes you're really remembering your mother and your mother calls you. And with animals, you can really see that. I mean, I don't have a pet, but I have often seen my friends who have pet dogs at home say that they're even before, if they're coming home or if their partner is coming home, even they would know that they have not even come into the building, but the dog is already kind of excited and is barking, and it's moving around. It knows that they have already come very close into the field. The same thing also keeps animals in herds, especially with the wolf pack. We can see that there is a knowing field within which the pack of wolves may know wherever they are. They can track that, and they know if someone is in danger. In the same way, the birds, the seagulls that they fly in this V formation, yeah, they also kind of they know who is there. They take turns, comes forward as the first and takes the biggest brunt of the wind, and by flying in this V formation, they fly for great distance. How do they know that? How did they learn to do that? How do they know when someone switches and another takes its place? And even if someone is sick within them, there are two that move off the pack. They stay back with this one and wait with that one. So, and here I have this beautiful video on starlings. Starlings are these really small birds, and they usually fly in huge flocks. And sometimes, there are these formations. They come together and they start creating these really intricate patterns, thousands of them flying together. And it's interesting, they never collide into each other. Yeah, they fly and they form these formations going in and out. And then you wonder, how do they know this? What is this knowing field, that is making this happen? So let's just watch this, just to see, that wonder, how does this happen? Yeah, how do they fly so close to the earth, but they don't fall off this whole pattern. They don't collide into each other. They don't hurt themselves. So something else is running this. Something else is present. Very intelligent field, and in constellation work, we are often tapping into this energetic field. Yeah, and it's actually called the morphogenetic field. And yeah, and how does this happen? When someone asks bird, how is that these things can show up with strangers representing someone, and they start feeling exactly like how they are experiencing? How is it possible? And a bird, this is what bird said, that I am unable to explain this phenomenon, but I see that it's so, and I use it. Yeah. So it's really quite phenomenal to, as you start doing this work and as facilitators and as helpers, when we are in the field, and what opens up and what is known and how is it known. And for me, it's not I am not surprised, because I've often heard in my own, spirituality, and in my own land spirituality, that everything that has ever been said, that has ever happened, is here. Like if Krishna spoke in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Mahabharata, that did not happen here. It is here. If you really tune into, you can hear those sounds. So Jesus was not there. Jesus is right here. So even these are usually said with respect to prophets, and these powerful beings that were there. But it is true for everything. It's also true for the pain. Things are right here. They are available. Everything that has ever been is also here, and it can be felt. Yeah. And it can also be cleared. Yeah. And it can be seen. And when we see, something happens to things that are forgotten. Yeah, they move. They're no longer stuck. And we really start seeing that in constellation work. And that is what I'm saying. This energetic field is phenomenological, in the sense, in the here and now, you can really feel it, sense it. And it's so difficult to show what's phenomenological. So what I've done is I've created a compilation of pictures, just to kind of share phenomenological. And I don't even know if this will have that effect, but for me it does. And I wanted to see, as you look through these pictures, just knowing what's happening for you. Yeah. These are pictures of a particular scene in nature, through different times, to different shades of light, to different seasons, and see if you can feel into that. Like, see, as you look at these pictures, what opens up for you in the body. Yeah. And phenomenological means this field, this energetic field, emerges in our direct experience in the here and now. And yeah, and it can be consciously experienced. So here is a picture. Even as you look at it, yeah, so Rupert Sheldrake is the person who coined this term morphogenetic field, and he did a lot of research. Yeah, you can look up his work, and this is what he said: morphogenetic fields carry information only, and are available throughout time and space without any loss of intensity after they have been created. They are created by the patterns of physical forms, including such things as crystals as well as biological systems. They help guide the formation of later similar systems. And finally, a newly forming system tunes into a previous system by having within it a seed that resonates with a similar seed in the earlier form. So what happened before makes room for what comes after. And in the same way, in this moment, when we look at what happens before, it also shifts. And in that sense, it also impacts what comes after. It's pretty phenomenal. I mean, there are many complex films that have been made on many of these movements, how the past shifts the present, and is there really a past, or is it all right here in our direct experience in the here and now? So in constellation work, we are able to kind of work with this field, this morphogenetic field. And then the second component of the work is order. Yeah. And orders of love, they are also called principles of relationship. It informs the core philosophy of family constellation. And this is something that Bert observed across his years. He started really observing that there is a way in which relationships and love moves in relationships. And when we align and life, not just love, life moves, life and love are synonymous in the way that life moves and flows. And when we surrender to that flow of our life, something opens up there. There is ease. It's like being carried in the current of the river, flowing with the river. And we look at this. What is this core philosophy? And then, of course, the third is facts. Facts are what happened, what happened, when did it happen, how did it happen, who is and was involved in these facts. So in constellation work, as we start working with the client's intention, the client's longing, we also inquire very briefly about facts. What are you seeing here? What's happening? As things start opening up in the energetic field, we start asking, about death, about births, about separation, about things that happened. And so right here, in our families and all our various relationships, we are guided by three fundamental needs. And these three fundamental needs shows up in complex ways. So what are these fundamental needs that is part of all of us? The first one is the need to belong. To be born into families and to survive in that families, we need to be bonded and attached. So we need to know that we belong there. That is our very foundation. And then the second is the need to maintain a balance of giving and taking. There needs to be some equilibrium that we give and we take. And so there is a forever movement for equilibrium, for balance. It's happening within us. It's not even conscious. And then the third is the need for safety. Of social convention, predictability. There is some sense of if our environment is continuously uncertain, then it is very difficult to survive within that. It impacts our own stability. So even within that uncertainty, there is a need forever for some order that supports us to experience safety. So this is also these three needs are very much part of our human experience. So, and Bert observed that these principles of relationship or these needs in families and groups and systems are enacted by what he began to call as conscience. And it's a little different from the conscience as is meant in the English word. But this conscience he's talking about is also quite, it's an impulse. It's an impulse within us that in the way when a child is born and the way the child grows up within a system, within a family system, within its neighborhood, within its school, within its, community, its survival is navigated through conscience. And with the help of this conscience that is there within us, we directly perceive what we have to do or not do in order to belong, in order to be able to give and to be able to take, and in order to have a place in our family and even within our systems and groups, right? So, and many consider conscience to be the highest and final authority to which we must conform in every situation in life. And I mean, this may or may not be true, but for a child, it has to. For a child to survive within a system, it needs to listen to this conscience. It is, this conscience is what drives a child's survival within a system. Yeah, and if I go a little bit further, based on the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, I will say that we have two most essential needs. One is for attachment and one is for authenticity. All our life, especially when we are children, our need for attachment is cannot be, because a human child survives through attachment. If we do not have attachment, we will, we adapt and we try to survive. But what goes in the background is our authenticity, our gut knowing, yeah, and our ability to really discern what safety is, right? So conscience is that impulse within us which keeps us attached at all times for survival. It is a built-in mechanism in our nervous system, yeah, and in this conscience, Bert observed in his work, there are three levels to this conscience. The first one is the personal conscience or individual conscience. Each one of us has a conscience. Yeah. So within our family system, you'll notice that within our family, and this conscience is very unique, based also on the people. Your conscience with your mom might be very different from the way it is with your father. Your conscience with your relatives might be different from your grandparents. Your conscience within an organization, your company, might be very different from the way you show up in other relationship or in your partner relationship. Or your conscience with your children might be very different. So this conscience is not just individual, it is also very, very different and unique. As our environment shifts, our conscience also shifts. Yeah. So personal conscience is a very individual conscience. It's very much specific to the individual. And that is why no three children have the same parent, because each have their own conscience that is driving the flow of their life and how they show up with their parents, within their family systems, in their schools, in their classrooms. So this conscience is, so that is a personal conscience. And then we have a collective or a group conscience or a family conscience. So the entire family itself has a conscience. And this conscience, which is the collective group or family conscience, which is also could be a conscience of a company, conscience of a system, conscience of an organization. The movements of this conscience are actually many times quite invisible. They are part of the unconscious movement, unsaid, unconscious movement of the system. Yeah. And then we have the spiritual conscience. The spiritual conscience is the all-pervading conscience which connects all of us. Yeah. So we look more closely at each of these consciences. Yeah. So we first come. So I just wanted to just show you how these three levels of conscience in the same moment we have all these three consciences in play. So if you look at this as a family system, so the personal or individual conscience is very much connected to an individual within this system. So each person here has a very individual, very personal conscience that is unique to them in the way they move in meeting their needs of belonging, balance of giving and taking, and order. Yeah. And then there is a systemic or a group conscience which binds the entire family together, family soul or organizations together. Yeah. And if you are not able to be part of that, it throws you out. Yeah. But you really, it really doesn't throw you out. It's so this the systemic conscience role is to keep this entire system together. Yeah. So it does not allow anyone to be forgotten. It does not allow anyone to be separated. So it really, when you see, look at a family system, the family conscience or the group conscience of a family system tries to keep everybody together. Yeah. And it does so many times at great cost to the personal conscience or the individual. Yeah. And then there is a spiritual conscience, which is so our journey of life, our maturation is actually growing beyond the personal, the systemic, and locating ourselves in the spiritual conscience. So when you're in the spiritual conscience, it's we are able to see the personal and the systemic. Yeah. So it's an inclusion of all of that. So spiritual conscience is a conscience that is able to hold way more. Yeah. So when we mature into the spiritual conscience, our ability to really start seeing and holding and agreeing keeps expanding and deepening. Yeah. So now let's look at each of these conscience, the personal conscience. Yeah. So every family has its own conscience, and every family system has its own rules around what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what you can do and what you cannot do. And for all his family members, sometimes it could be a nuclear family has a particular rule because there are two people who came from two different systems there. And then you go back to each of these systems of your parent, your maternal and your paternal, and you see that there is a bigger, there is more things which are right. So you have forever, you are learning, and you go to one side. Like I can say that when I go to my, and this is so unique because I remember that in my mother's side of the family, things are very strict. We didn't laugh loudly. There were a lot of rules around what's pure, what's good. There was a righteousness around uh, uh, like alcohol. People didn't drink alcohol. People who drank alcohol were judged, or smoking was judged, lying was judged. So there was a very what should I say, very this sense of righteousness and what's right was much more stronger, and this need to be like a really good person, just person, fair person, fairness. And so that was very, very strong in my mother's family. And my father's family was complete opposite. People lying was all right. People were loud and laughter. So there was, in a sense, I experienced much more freedom, and there was also cleanliness and hygiene was not of, so that was different because my mother's side, it was clean. People would even have more showers a day, or so there was clothes with spick and span, clean, clear, pure, and there those things were not very important, but bonds, relationships, all those things were really important. Um, Food was very important, what we ate, and we ate together. And there was some, so they both are very different. And as I moved into each family, I was a different person. I was a very different person in my maternal family, and I was a very different person in my paternal family. And I could see this change that's happening to fit in, and sometimes they would crisscross, and it would create a lot of conflict, guilt. Yeah. So this is what we are going to look at, how this personal conscience as a child, how it bound me to these different systems. Yeah. And and with the help of this conscience, yeah, we perceive what we have to do or not do in order to be seen, acknowledged, loved, recognized within our families. It drives a doing and being in our families. And this, if we can take even to your classrooms, different teachers come into a class, and who you are changes. So there is something in us who says that to be seen, this is where I have to be. And it is not something we're consciously doing, it's happening. So there is an impulse, that is an individual impulse in us that ascertains our survival, and that we meet least harm in that scenario, in that system, and that is guided through conscience. Yeah. And And many times our survival is very much connected to obedience to conscience. When we are able to align with our conscience. So whenever we do things which the system or the environment doesn't support, we feel guilty and we want to change our behavior. Because then suddenly we are not seen, we might face some harm, we might be in the line of fire, in the line of anger, in the line of being alienated or excluded. So our belonging can get compromised. People don't want to take from us or don't want to give to us. In these sense, so this just changes. So then we are again drawn by guilt to mend our ways so we can belong. So the personal conscience really does that. Yeah, it makes it possible for a child to survive within a system. But what is very interesting is that what is held morally right in one family may appear as wrong in another family. So this conscience is very connected to morality. That is in one system, right? And our conscience keeps us in alignment to that morality, to survive within that system, to belong within that system, to meet those essential needs, right? And how does it do that? Yeah. So individual conscience is that which binds or attaches a child to its primary family system for survival. And it is very much based on the sense of right and wrong within that family system. And many times you may feel like some things are not right. You're told not to lie, but you see adults lying and you are confused. And you're told not to lie. Yeah. And you don't understand that. It's very confusing for a child, but then if you don't, then you can either get beaten or you lose the love of your parents. You perceive that you are excluded, right? So that means that you want to align, even though you want to fight, you do that, but you also keep aligning, right? So it really protects a child within that system. Yeah. But the thing about the individual conscience is that it's very narrow conscience. It's a child's conscience. So if we grow up and we continue to be in that conscience, then it limits our adultness, our maturation. Yeah. And so what happens here? How does this show up within us? So when we follow and act in accordance with the rules and regulations, the norms of a family system, we feel secured in our belonging. We feel that we are loved. So what is that feeling of being loved, of being accepted, of being included within family things? People see you, people talk to you, people show that they love you, they care for you. So you find the sense of movement and belonging. And that emerges as this feeling that Bert calls innocence. We feel innocence. Yeah, the innocence of a child. Like you feel innocent, you feel loved. So your actions, and every time you move away from that, anytime you go against the rules and regulations and norms of our family system, there is a fear that our right, our belongingness, our ability to be seen, our place in our family system is going to get threatened, right? And we might lose that place, and that emerges in us as the feeling of guilt. So we feel guilty. And what happens when we feel guilty? When we feel guilty, we want to feel innocent again. So we mend our ways, we change our behavior in such a way that we regain innocence conscience, meaning that we come back into the group. So in a way, it is keeping the herd, keeping us in this individual. It is supporting us to survive within our system. But just like that tree which bends, which doesn't get the sun, it moves towards the sun. We need this love. We need to belong. We need to stay attached. But what happens is our own sense of our own gut knowing, our intuition, that starts getting disconnected. Our ability to be ourselves, to know ourselves, our authenticity many times get compromised in our journey of survival within our systems, right? So the individual conscience connects us only to certain people and groups. So that is a limit. It's a limited conscience, right? So while it keeps us attached to one system, it excludes us from others. It says that this is the right way, this is what we need to do, and they are wrong. So it is actually in order to feel innocent, in order to feel belonging, in order to be in that state of being innocent is when great crimes are committed. So great crimes, great evil doesn't happen with the guilt, But the great evil gets many times committed because we want to feel innocent. We want to feel belonging to this group, this system. And for that, we exclude others. Yeah? And we abide by the rules of that system in which we need to feel innocent again and we need to feel belonging. So personal conscience, if we are still living our life in the personal conscience as an adult, it is for great crimes, great our vision or our knowing is very much limited, then is compromised. Yeah. And what is group conscience? So here I have some, pictures, images also from movies, famous movies, where you can see this group conscience and how it keeps the entire family together, and collective or group conscience is that which ensures the survival of the entire system or the group. Yeah. The thing about this particular conscience is that it's systemic. It goes, it is intergenerational. It is based on what has happened. Its roots go far beyond. It is unconscious and it is amoral. That means there is no morality. So group conscience is not something that we see. It is invisible. It is unconscious. It is these unconscious norms that that keep us moving. Yeah. Unconscious norms within our families. Like I was watching an episode yesterday of New Amsterdam. It's a TV series, and I saw Anupam Kher. His son's the woman who's having his son's child is living within his house, and she has ODD, and she gets a cat, a black cat, and just the black cat has such an impact on this doctor. He is a neurosurgeon of this really huge hospital in New York. But this black cat kind of completely takes over his thing, and he is like, everything negative is going to happen. So something about the individual and the collective conscience that he has to really come out of that to allow that, yeah, to see it, yeah. So first the unconscious immediately takes over, and it takes over everything. It starts impacting his operation that he's about to do a neurosurgery, and it keeps coming, this black cat, right? So something about that within part of his own growing up, his own family, some incident somewhere the black cat caused, and we have this in India, the black cat is dangerous, or it's evil, or seeing a black cat can bring bad omens and evils, and things like that. And so this unconscious, that is part of our collective group conscience, and we have many things like that in families that keep the survival of that's in some time it's supported, yeah. And if you look at this, so group conscience is bigger than the individual conscience. So individual conscience is about an individual survival within a group. The group conscience is about the survival of the entire system, yeah. And its role is to keep the system, family system, together at any cost, yeah. That means if we forget somebody in our family system, we say, you are out, we don't want to remember you ever again, you did something that was against the rules of the system, so we are cutting you off from the family. But it doesn't happen. The collective conscience is constantly trying to remember that and include that person, and many times the way it does is someone in the coming generation is taken in its place, in that person's place, and they start behaving and reenacting the same narrative again in a movement to remember without knowing. They don't know they are remembering someone else. But this is what we start seeing in constellation. And the collective conscience, it treats dead and alive members the same. Yeah. And this movement of the collective unconscious, the group unconscious conscience is visible. We can start seeing that within family constellation work. And then there is a spiritual conscience. It is the overarching conscience. When we are in harmony with this conscience, everything falls in place. And I want to specifically read here what Bird says about this, the spiritual conscience. And yeah. When we are located in this conscience, we are able to experience self-awareness, whole perspective, calm, relaxed alertness, caring, emotional maturity, compassion, confidence, clarity. Yeah. So spiritual conscience is the freedom of understanding that comes after foolishness and remorse. Yeah. So I want to read that what Bird says about the third conscience, which is the spiritual conscience. The, the third conscience, the spiritual conscience, guides us towards the greater whole. Following this, third conscience or the spiritual conscience requires great effort, perhaps even a spiritual effort, because it tears us away from obedience to the dictates of our family, religion, culture, personal identity. It demands of us, if we love it, that we leave behind what we have known and follow the conscience of the greater whole. This conscience is ineffable and mysterious, and it does not follow the laws of the personal and the collective conscience, which we know more intimately. So, moving into the spiritual conscience is actually more of a lone walk, a soul journey, a solo journey. Yeah. And you really need to start locating into your own self. So, this is the movement of really finding your own truth, your own gut, your own listening to your own self, your own truth in the whole, finding your place in the whole, yeah, in the greater whole, walking in alignment with the greater whole. And this means that we will experience that guilt in that movement. And how do we meet that guilt? Yeah. And so the movement into the spiritual conscience really requires courage, a lot of courage, yeah, and compassion, confidence, clarity, brings clarity, yeah, and yeah. So I really wanted to kind of uh, have this image. These are pictures from my own life, my individual life, and these different groups in my whole life that have been part of myself and where I have given in uh, to the collective conscience and lost in touch with my own knowing, and where I am able to find my own self and move. And that means at some point, as I choose myself more and more, I may lose my belonging within groups, within systems, and that's all right. Yeah, my belonging has expanded to the universe. My belonging has shifted, and it's okay. So that is the maturity, and we keep coming in our whole life journey. We keep coming in this movement in loggerheads with our personal and the collective conscience all the time, and then and that allows us possibility to move further, to expand further, to deepen further. So we are always navigating conscience, yeah, again and again, because we live our lives. We are part of groups and systems and communities. So we will keep meeting our personal and collective unconscious conscience. And that also gives us opportunity to kind of expand, because whenever we meet the personal and the collective conscience, we will experience a limit in our freedom and our free will. Yeah. And we might get taken in, in service of that. And then as we mature, as we grow, as we have a bigger picture, we are able to kind of step out of that and gain more and more the freedom of understanding. And so that's what many times we begin to see this in constellation. And that's why constellation work is so important, so precious. And the constellation philosophy is so precious, because we can also start finding the movement within our own body. Yeah, we can start knowing the binds and bonds of conscience, how it emerges in our own phenomenological awareness. and we can start kind of including that and expanding. So now we come to the principles of relationships. And this is where I am going to set if we are at a time mark. And we are. So this video that is now digested is about conscience. And we'll go to principles of relationships and orders of love in the next video. So I pause here, continue the journey.